Alright, I'm going to talk to you about area. And area, by definition, is the number of square units, whether your units are inches or meters or feet, yards, but square units that takes up that it filled the figure. And so here you can see through this visual that, this particular rectangle right here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 square units inside of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for this shape right here. So it's just the number of square units. It doesn't have to be a square figure object, such as this triangle. It's still the number of square figures or square units that fit inside of it. It doesn't have to be a square to have area. It's just it's the number of square units that fit inside of it. So now there's a quick way. You can sit here like this and you can count the number of squares on the grid and add them up and things like that. That takes a little bit of time, and you're not always going to have grid paper. So there are actually formulas that you can use that can help you find the area of various shapes. So for a square, it's being slow for some reason. Okay. Alright, so we have a square, and the formula for the area of a square is length times width. It doesn't really matter what your length or your width is, because on a square, every single side is the same length. So your length and your width are the same. So essentially, you could say that the formula for the area of a square is just whatever the length of the side is squared. Okay? And so I'm going to use this example here of a square with a side length of 5 inches. So we're going to use the formula area equals side squared. Okay? The side is 5 inches, so area is equal to 5 inches, and I'm going to put them in parentheses, times 5 inches. Now when I multiply them, 5 times 5 is 25. Inches times inches is inches squared. So that's why we want to square our inches. And it's another way of seeing that. You always want to put a little 2 to show that your unit is squared for area. Another way of thinking about it is because that's how many squares actually fit inside of it. So there's 25 squares that are 1 inch by 1 inch inside this square. The next shape is a rectangle. And the formula for the area of a rectangle is length times width. Now it doesn't really matter. I may say this is the length and that this is the width, but then when you turn this object over, you could say that this is the width and this is length. So it doesn't really matter which one's the length and which one's the width, as long as you are that you're consistent when you're solving the problem. So with this example here, we've got 10 meters here and 2 meters here. So the formula for area is length times width. And I'm just going to designate this side the length and this side the width. So just that way I know that I'm not using this as both the length and the width, or vice versa. Okay, so area is equal to, my length is 10, so I'm going to replace 10 with L over here, so it's going to be 10 meters, times, and my width is 2 meters, so I'm going to replace it with 2 meters here. So when I multiply 10 meters times 2 meters, I get 20, and then it's square meters. So there are 20 squares that are 1 meter by 1 meter that fit inside this rectangle right here. Okay. The next shape is a parallelogram, and the formula for the area of a parallelogram is base times height. Now what's important to remember here is you've got the base is the bottom, and the height is the height from top to bottom of the parallelogram. It's not the length of the slant, it's the height of the parallelogram. So when I am plugging that into a formula, such as this example here, I need to remember that this represents the height. If I told you that this height was, sorry, that's not really realistic. If I told you that this height here was 4 meters, let me fix this. No. Let's fix all this. If I told you that this was 4 meters right here, that's really irrelevant in solving the problem. You don't need that information. So we're going to just use that we know that area is equal to base times height. So we're going to plug everything in here. So our base is 9 meters. And you really don't have to put that every time if you know that it's just going to be meters squared in your answer. So I'm just going to plug it in without the unit there. So it's going to be 9 meters times 3 meters. So when I get my answer, 9 times 3 is 27. And then because it's meters times meters, it's square meters. So my answer is 27 square meters. So there would be 27 square meters that would fit inside this parallelogram right here. The last one I'm going to talk about right now is a triangle. And the formula for the area of a triangle is 1/2 of base times height. And the reason that this works is because if you have, and I'm going to try to draw this. Sorry, this is so slow. If you have a rectangle right here, and if we called this base and we called this height, right, it's the same thing as saying length times width. Okay, that would tell us how many square units fit inside this rectangle. Well, a triangle is essentially half of that. So if I find base times height, take off that part, divide by 2, that tells me how many square units I have right here. Well, that's what you're doing right here. You're just saying base times height, and then you're dividing it by 2. Multiplying by 1/2 is the same thing as dividing by 2. And it works. You're thinking, well, this isn't a right triangle right here, whereas that's a right triangle. It still works with different shapes, because if, and again, I know my drawings aren't going to be straight, but if you have this right here, that's awful drawing, sorry, but this is the base and this is the height. Well, that's not a height. Sorry. This is the height. This height right here is the same thing as the height right here. And so if I find the area of the entire thing, and if I take out that part, that's half of this, and I take out this part, that's half of this. So that's why it still works by doing 1/2 of base times height, regardless of what kind of triangle you have. Okay, and so let's try it with, we'll try it with a right triangle first. I don't know why this is so slow today. Okay, so area is equal to 1/2 of base times height. I'm going to say this is my base, this is the height. This is extra information. I don't have to use it. Just because it's there doesn't mean that I have to use it. So area is equal to 1/2 of, my base is 6 and my height is 7. Well, I'm going to go ahead and multiply. 6 times 7 is 42. So 1/2 of 42 means to just divide by 2. So half of 42 is 21, and because it's inches times inches, it's going to be square inches. So the area of this triangle right here is 21 square inches. Then I'm going to show you with this triangle as well how it also works. Area is equal to 1/2 of base times height. And notice I'm writing my formulas, especially in the beginning when you're doing this. It's a really good idea to write your formulas every single time just to get in the habit of doing it. Because a lot of times people forget to divide by 2 at the triangle. Well, if you write your formula and you just follow the steps, you're not going to make that careless mistake, okay? So area is equal to 1/2 of base times height. Let's say that the base is 6, and let's call the height 5, okay? So my base is 6, and then we'll say the height is 5. Well, 6 times 5 is 30. Half of 30 is 15, so the area is 15, and then it is square meters.